Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 5, activating starseeds, walk-ins, and the new human of the golden age. I'm your host, Washela Sananda, and today it's my pleasure to introduce you to Geraldine Orozco. Welcome, Geraldine.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you. I'm really excited for our conversation today. And before we jump into that, I'd like to invite everyone to join us in a short alignment process so we can really be present and focused for this information that's going to come through in this conversation. So for starters, I invite everyone, if you can, to close your eyes and deepen the breath into the belly. And as you're breathing, just allow yourself to relax in to the body, bringing your presence fully into your physical body, and then make contact with your heart center and find the light within your heart. This is your divine presence, the I am light within your heart. And feel that light expanding. And now bring that light all the way up through the top of your head, extending up into central sun, making contact with the heart light of central sun, the essence of central sun, and then bring that light down into the crown of your head, spreading out into the body, into every energy center. And then continuing that line of energy down into the center of the earth, making contact with the heart light, Mother Gaia. And then bring that energy, the creative liquid crystal plasmic energy, up into the base of your spine, spreading out into every energy center to the top of the head. And then allow those energies from above, below, and within to create that trinity of light in your heart center. Breathing into that space, finding focus, clarity, and presence, and allowing your higher self to receive whatever is perfect for you in this conversation today. One more deep breath, and then come on back. Thank you so much for joining me in that sacred space. And now I'm going to share some of what Geraldine has been up to, and it's a lot. So here we go. Geraldine Orozco is a certified hypnotherapist, meditation master, NLP practitioner, mindfulness-based stress reduction therapist, Qigong master, and owner of San Francisco-based Bay Area Meditation. She has certifications in advanced pranic healing, quantum energy healing, and she studied with a shamanic energy healer. In 2013, Geraldine experienced a life-changing interdimensional contact experience, which resulted in the activation of psychic abilities of the multidimensional body and energy field. In 2017, she uncovered a lifelong history of contact. Geraldine created a healing modality called DNA Reprogramming in order to access, identify, heal, and transmute trauma, fragmentation of the soul. She is currently writing her first book, DNA Origins and the Human Hybridization Program. She's founder of hybridmother.com, co-director of Opus, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. She's a radio host, an artist, an international speaker, and a YouTuber. So you're up to so many amazing things, Geraldine. I would love to just start, for those who aren't familiar with your work, with a little bit of background on you said you had this awakening experience in 2013. Was that really the beginning of your spiritual awakening, or did you start out this way? Can you unpack that a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. My journey began pretty Well, honestly, I was raised in a very spiritual family. So I would meditate at an earlier age. But it wasn't until 2008, I think, when things really started to kind of take a turn when a partner, my beloved partner, passed away at that time. And that's when I really started to question, our matrix reality, the construct of our reality, the roles that we play as humans, as a woman, in our society, all the things that we believe are supposed to be, the education, the family, the marriage, all these things. I began to kind of deconstruct those things, and I went deep into meditation. And alongside of that, I funded Bay Area Meditation, which started out as a very small meditation group in my office, and then grew into a corporate kind of service in the Bay Area. And I began to dive deeper into meditation, kind of self-discovery, because I wasn't finding the answers outside in order to answer really profound questions about who I was and what the purpose of this life was. And I think that's when it started to deprogram following emotions into ancestral lineages, and then going all the way back eventually into the root of our existence. And I think it's when I got to that point, questioning, the bigger picture of our society and our existence. That's when I had this incredible contact experience in 2013, which kind of shattered my perception of reality even deeper. And through that experience, I was shown many incredible things that I never could have imagined about our reality, about the construct of reality, interdimensional existence, our ET races. I was also shown hybrid children, which were mine, which meant that I was a part of this hybridization program since I was a child. And that, again, was another layer of having to uncover and dive into. So as a result of that experience, I became psychic. The very next day, I had this incredible ability to see the multidimensional body, to tune into people's emotions, senses, thoughts. And from that point on, it was very difficult to go back into everyday life. So it took me 5 years from that moment to decide that I wasn't able to live a double life in terms of knowing what I knew in terms of ET contact and, the questions that we had about our reality. And then alongside a career, which I was in event planning, I had an event planning company aside from my meditation company. And it just felt very, very empty. And I was in a partnership, which also was not in alignment with those things. And so all of those things started to just easily crumble away when I made another decision to really search for truth. What was truth? What does it mean to be truth? What is free will? What role does it play? What role do we play in the bigger picture as a human race? And that took me into channeling massive amounts of information about our origins here on the planet, what DNA is, what is holographic DNA, and kind of take a tour of this multiverse per se, and kind of understand, how we're linked together. And it started a magical series of events in 5 years after that channeling, where I soon had a near-death experience. And that really helped me understand our crossing over process, understanding what we are in the afterlife, what occurs to the soul, what's happening. And that's also, previous to that, I decided to become a hypnotherapist to assist people in understanding these processes as well. I also began to speak light language, which is like a frequency, and I started to paint all of a sudden. So my artwork is representing, light structures and codes of information. So this is kind of how it went in, and of course dedicated my entire life now to dissemination of this information and to hold space for others to understand what our multidimensional body is and how it functions, essentially.
Wow, what a fascinating story you have. As you're talking about your near-death experience and you came back with some kind of new talents and gifts, do you feel like that was also a type of walk-in experience?
No, I don't. Walk-ins is the idea that another soul or another essence enters into the body. But I have quite a unique perspective about this, or I don't know, maybe it's unique, maybe it's not, but just by an understanding of what I see in the multidimensional body, it would be another fragment of your own self that is kind of becoming present in your physical body. And I think at that point, I had reintegrated fragments of all of my past lives. I had revisited all of the past lives, reintegrated all the trauma in this life, reintegrated trauma in all the past lives. And what that helps is create a really strong integration and understanding of yourself as a whole. So this death process was kind of taking it to the next level. Physically, what is it? What does it mean to meet yourself in non-form? And so when I left the body, it allowed me to understand, psychologically what happens and what we tune into and how we kind of move through the ninth, through the 10th and 10th dimensional plane before we head out into the higher dimensions. And what we're met with, the information that we're met with, which is a system of hologram, of genetic information. It's DNA information that we're tuning into holographically upon the departure and disconnect of the physical body. So we can really tune in to cyclical patterns of ancestral trauma, and all of that is available for you the moment you detach from the body. It's not to say that this is only going to occur during death. In fact, for centuries, cultures around the world have been studying death and the process of death and the afterlife for exactly this reason. We, the power of the human is to be able to awaken consciousness in the physical body, but also in these altered-dimensional planes, whether it's dream time, whether you're astral projecting, and then eventually the next step is death. It's just the departure from the physical. So it was very much a process of integration and understanding the mechanics of the hologram, how the physical fractal of source, which is this physical body, becomes manifest, and how you can navigate, how it's utilized in the bigger picture.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for unpacking that a little bit. So I know you work a lot with DNA. That's really a big focus of what you're about. And I know there's a lot of information out there. I think a lot of misconceptions as well. How do you connect DNA with consciousness? And I know you have a unique perspective on this.
Yeah. Well, just how I kind of came across this information was by looking at the multidimensional body of others and looking at my own multidimensional body, understanding how information has this incredibly beautiful intelligence and self-organizing mechanism to it. When source, the soul, is attached to the physical body, we're attaching to two systems. One is the main core soul, and the second is the DNA, the genetic structure of this body, the physical part of it. And so within the physical is a record, is in the DNA, is essentially massive amounts of information about what you were, what you've experienced, all of that is available to you in the physical body. And this physical body is a holographic projection of that information based on resonance and what you're meant to experience in this short little life, maybe 100 years of life that you have here on this planet. So the connection between that is, as infinite consciousness, you're becoming aware of yourself through this one fractal projection. It's a hologram, this physical body. But what holographic DNA is, if you can imagine our structure of the body, memory is not stored in just one localized location in the body. It's actually, and this is scientifically proven, and I talk a lot about this in my work, the little experiments that were done on mice, for example, that removed 70% of the brain to see if they would still remember their path down a trained maze. And even though they removed the 70%, of course, the mice were still able to remember how to walk down that maze, but even though stumbling, so this is very simple experiment that was done, but it's helping us understand that memory is not stored within a certain location. It is an entire network of information. And now, just a couple of weeks ago, I did a conference on the morphogenetic field where we talk about, what is that structure? That structure of intelligence instruction manual for creation of this physical body. And it's something that is not just simply encoded in the genetic code and what it's writing, the protein that it writes in order to create the form. But more so than that, we are kind of in this soup of creation where every single molecule is allocated exactly where it needs to be in order to create this time and space. So that is very interesting because in a sense, we are exploring these life experiences through the physical body that is constantly recording everything that we're experiencing 360 degrees around the body without often, most of us are not constantly in the body, we're outside of the body. And it isn't until we come into the body that we can understand how to manage and navigate these mechanisms. But holographic DNA stores information not only of your current lifetime and the connections that you have to your ancestral lineages, which you connect to by resonance, but you are connecting to a much larger network. The human race is one organism. In fact, it functions very much like a cell would within a body. Within a cell, there's a complex construct of creation, and the same thing for the human race. There's a variety of aspects and systems that carry out different jobs on this planet Earth, and the Earth in itself functions like a cell as well. All of these molecules down to the molecular level are oscillating to create these fields. Just like our physical body, we are oscillating vibrationally, and so we have a toroidal field around the body, and how we communicate with one another is through this quantum non-locality, it's through this communication, this network that we're interconnected. And so the same way that the cells in our physical body, humans and other humans on this planet and other planets in our galaxies and more galaxies in the multiverse, are all kind of functioning in this similar self-similar expression. So we are storing within the body, in fact, in 1 tablespoon, you can hold the information of the entire world history. So you can imagine how much information we actually have in the body, and what scientists and biologists are calling junk DNA, which they name all of the DNA that isn't writing protein, which isn't, let's say, creating a cell in a finger or an arm, or whatever your physical body is. What does that other DNA, parts of DNA, what is it writing? And so there's 2 parts to this. What's writing is that intelligence instruction manual for the rest of the system, the hologram. This is where we understand phantom limbs, for example. When somebody loses an arm and yet they have a prosthetic, it's as if they can feel and they can still work with a prosthetic. So we're very much a hologram in which there's an instruction manual, or you can say a blueprint, that creates the physical body. But the data that's being stored in there is not just your current life and all your ancestors. It's also all of the simultaneous fragments of yourself, which we call past lives or future lives. These simultaneous fragments are also available in that junk DNA. And so we begin to tune in to that information, and we can bring it into the present moment. So to kind of conclude with the DNA aspect of it, within the DNA, we are a cocktail of DNA. So for those that are very much in alignment with their starseed connections, or all of these interdimensional aspects of themselves, all of this information is encoded. And as you raise the vibrational frequency, as you deprogram limiting belief systems, you have access to this data. And it's infinite amounts of information that essentially allow you to see yourself as a whole, more so than just a limited one perspective aspect of your own self.
Beautiful. Yeah. And it's funny, you were answering my questions as I was thinking them.
Oh,
That's,
okay, great.
one of the things I was considering while you were talking is, it's how we will oftentimes, as we start to explore a certain aspect of self, like, someone becomes conscious of, we'll say, a Syrian aspect of their
Yeah.
starseed lineage, and then like focusing on that for a while, but then another one will drop in. Oh, I'm also Andromedan, and I'm also, and more memories will drop in. I find that's true also with past lives. And so anytime we focus on something, it's sort of possible to, as long as we don't get too attached, I think, to one thing, we expand into, oh, but I'm all of it. And I think that just can continue out and out and out until we reach, I am all of it, right? At the highest level.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that you said, don't get attached to it. That's exactly what I think. I think that it's very interesting right now. As a collective, we're kind of very curious about the ET agendas and the ET presence. And it's part of the evolution and growth of mankind. Like, we need to go through this process, but it's very important not to get stuck on any of these stories or histories or definite definitions, of what this kind of expressions of consciousness are, because in reality, because we live in a very beautiful self-organized system, these races, or what we want to call races of different species, are very much more a spectrum of vibrational frequency, rather than just definite species that are compartmentalized into certain groups. And this is sometimes it's difficult for us to understand. A lot of people have contact experiences where they're seeing multiple beings, sometimes reptilians or draconians, where they believe are very dark beings. But what you soon understand is that it's vibrational frequency, and you're meeting yourself essentially on these levels as you experience these things. And your ability to transcend those experiences, or whatever whatever is limiting or causing confusion or feelings of disconnect in these experiences, is the key to transcending into higher levels of access of these kinds of experiences. And again, coming back into that wholeness, we want to experience all the ranges of these species, because they are us, we are them, and coming into this collective unity consciousness, which is the next step for humanity, terrestrial and interdimensional.
Yes. So let's dig into that a little bit. How do you feel that the ET races are assisting us? And what is the next step in human evolution? And do we require the help of non-human beings?
Yeah, great question. The way that I have seen things in terms of, my question during this journey was to understand, what do we need to know about the hologram in terms of what we're projecting, in order to understand the power that the human has in co-creation. We tend to think that these species are more advanced than us. They have more advanced technology. They have more advanced experiences. And they somehow are on a higher scale of awareness than we are. And although in some aspects that might be true, they do have highly advanced technology. They are from the future, and they are more connected to a higher awareness of the collective. We have to pull away from the idea that we are separate from anything, including these beings. The idea that something is coming to help, the idea that something is external to us, will quickly confuse, and it'll also limit your ability to understand how to apply free will. And people get very lost in the idea that something is outside of us that will come save or protect or to support. And the way that the mechanics of the universe really work is that it has to begin with the human. The human is the one that has to help themselves. The human has to awaken. The human has to raise their consciousness. And every single one human that does that, we begin to create an entire human race that has access to their own fragments, which are these races. And when we connect vibrationally to these species, whether they're Arcturians or highlight beings, whatever they are, you're meeting fragments of your own self. Therefore, you have to be able to sustain the vibrational frequency in order to connect and communicate with them, and to participate and to know what your contractual experience is with all of these beings. And I think that's really the most important. I think the attention, in order to reach unity consciousness, has to return back to the human in terms of their navigation of their interdimensionality. And there's a lot of responsibility for that, because we as humans have to take accountability for how much we're willing to move beyond the fears of the unknown, the limitations of the perception of man. We really have to push ourselves, because we are heading in that direction pretty quickly. I do not believe that anything outside of us is here to save us or to protect or to assist. I think that the human has to immediately work on bringing itself to a highest vibrational frequency in order to play the key role that it has in manifestation. The human body is incarnated in the physical form in order to manifest. We are here to master the three-dimensional plane. And the work that we're doing in this third-dimensional plane will contribute to the evolution collectively of the whole. So it's important for us to focus on that and let that be the focus into unity consciousness, rather than thinking that something external will come and support or is supporting. I don't believe there's anything outside of the human, his own universe, his own creation.
Interesting. So do you have some like applicable tips or advice for people who are working on that self-mastery and mastering manifestation in 3D? How can you advise people to be more efficient and improve and master that?
Absolutely. So this is something that I do work with my clients in DNA reprogramming, but essentially what we are doing in that work is that you are, first of all, taking time to get to know yourself in a very profound way, which means observing yourself, being a constant observer, non-judgmental observer is going to be one of the most compassionate things for the journey of the seeker and the one that is looking to reach these levels of awareness. Because anytime that we begin to judge something, we are entangling ourselves energetically and depleting life force. And it can be very easy for mankind to deplete and to get confused and to lose clarity in the focus of the journey in that way. So it's important to learn and train not just the mind psychologically, but the entire nervous system of the body to come into a state of neutrality. And we should be able to have mastery over this in the physical body. And in a world where everything is about the senses in the three-dimensional plane, we have our five senses to help us navigate. It's almost as if everything we've learned about the physical body and reality is inverted. And so we have to turn that upside down, that understanding that in fact the human experience is not so much about the senses and the feeling body, but just to use that as a tool in order to understand and to inform yourself in your experience. And all seeing things as quite temporarily. This is very compassionate to do for the self, because otherwise we get stuck. And anything in the universe is constantly moving at such a rapid rate that anytime we get stuck in definition or form, suffering will incur, because things need to be fluid. So the more we learn about how this body is a fountain, is is a life force. It's constant moving life force in the body. We can immediately move through emotions quickly. We can heal the body from illnesses. We can regenerate and restore the physical body, and we can access higher levels of information that transcend the limitations of the physical everyday life. And that level of navigation assists you in living a life of non-suffering, because you are looking at higher truth. Higher truth is expansive and it's collective. And ultimately, what free will really means is that you're choosing between the ego, self-service, or what is best for the collective. And what we want to try to shift gears towards in this constant state of neutrality is to be able to choose wisely every action, every thought, every emotion, every input into the system as something that is good for the collective. So if you can think in terms of that, it'll be easier, hopefully, to assist the ego in gently nurturing it into feeling expansive and connected to everything, deprogramming it from any programs of separation, of disconnect, into the awareness that you are interconnected and absolutely with everything. And that, I believe, is a powerful shift that really will help you in your work.
That's very helpful. Yes, just that contemplation of, is this good for the collective, is a really good rule of thumb or guide for us in all we do. I'd like to move into, if you're open to it, a discussion about, in the beginning, you mentioned your hybrid children. And I know that's fascinating to me, and I think many people. I'd love to hear more about that experience, about what does that mean? You saw your hybrid children, and who are they and why, and everything that goes along with that. So whatever you can share about that.
Thank you so much. Actually, that is a very important question, and I think that it's the key to understanding the next step of ET consciousness and what we are as human. Because when I saw the hybrid children for the first time, it was the most powerful experience of reconnection. And I'm not a mother in this lifetime, but the maternal instinct that entered into the body the moment of locking eyes with that child was overwhelming. You understand what it means to love unconditionally and to just not care about yourself, your life, just focus on the well-being of this beautiful organism. And it was from 8 children in this experience. I was introduced to 4 physically. And the children were a mix of humanoid and also different species. So for example, the child had this beautiful blonde, strange, translucent looking hair, very frail structure to his body. The complexion was almost grayish blue, and the eyes, the pupil was the size of our ocular socket. And the pigmentation of the eyes was phenomenal, like the most exotic animal that you could ever experience here on Earth. Just pigmentations of blues and purples and colors. So what you're seeing is like a very heightened, genetically advanced organism, and more so than physically, it is incredibly advanced telepathically and intuitively. So I felt completely naked in front of the child. It could see everything about me, and I knew that it could see. I could see that I could feel it scanning my thoughts. I could see it understanding myself in the most raw, purest form. And I felt the same with all of the 4 children. So and the interesting thing is that when you connect with them, you realize that you are going through an emotional process, because you're thinking, I need to be here to protect this child, but the child is way more advanced than you are, because it has a very profound understanding of its role in this dynamic of mother and child, I guess you could say. They are very clear in understanding that the meeting is just an energetic and vibrational impression in order to support their life. Just like here on Earth, we do experiments with little mice that when you separate them from their mother, they don't develop as well. when you connect them with the mother, there's all these chemical systems that are unlocking to allow the child to evolve and to progress in a healthier manner. The little mouse is bigger, it's stronger, it's healthier. It tends to take nutrients in the body better as opposed to a child that is abandoned. So these kind of laws of exchange and imprint of vibrational frequency is the same in this realm as it is in the terrestrial realm. And so what that helps us understand is the role that we play in this whole hybridization program. There are many hundreds, thousands of women that I have interviewed and connected and work with through hybridmother.com in order to understand what the hybridization program is. And there's a process, a very specific process that at a very early age, this hybridization is before you come into the life. You are already assigned, let's say, or choosing to participate in this. And you're choosing to participate because of your historic lineage. People that are in the hybridization program, that remember the hybridization program in this terrestrial timeline, have heightened levels of advanced genetic activation in their code, and they are quite preserved bloodlines. So they are bloodlines that have been preserved since Mesopotamia, and have been mixed and genetically modified historically for specific vibrational frequencies. What does it mean to be genetically modified? When we're combined with another species, we are awakening. It's more about awakening consciousness from that lineage. And what that means is that you have access to that information. So let's say you're combined with an Arcturian. When you have that bloodline in your history, you have access to that information, that data, those abilities, those gifts, that understanding. And it's, again, it's a spectrum of frequency. So a lot of these children are a cocktail of that DNA, cocktail of data and information. So what that means for us is that as human form, it's almost as if we are that pivotal meeting point between these intelligences into the physical form. And the physical body is a reproductive system, not just in the physical body, but energetically. And the purpose of the human race is a reproductive system. We are a system of creation. We are the womb of the universe in a sense, because here we create, we unify the feminine and masculine life force. And the product of that unity is always a creation. It's always the third. So that being said, these agendas are very interesting because there are many different agendas. And all of these agendas in the hybridization program are part of the construct of this matrix multiverse, which is within the 12th dimensional plane and under. 13th dimensional plane, you're already getting into light beings. But we live in a 13th dimensional construct, and all of these spectrum of races are compartmentalized in these 13 dimensional planes, and we hold that genetic information in the physical body. So the hybridization program, in essence, is something that we agree to, and the purpose of that is to continue to sustain this matrix multiverse. We participate in that. There are no victims in my understanding, in my complete overview of this program, even though as humans, because of our trauma records in our system, we tend to perceive some of this experience as very traumatic. And I myself have had these experiences that could be perceived as very traumatic. But when I view and I remote view each one of these experiences, you begin to understand why the human has this perception. So I'll stop there and see if any other question, or maybe another direction that you want to take that. We can keep going. There's more,
Yeah.
but
yeah. Well, one of my questions that came up during that, and thank you for sharing that so eloquently. So I'm thinking about these hybrid children. Are they, there are a lot of kind of what we call super children being born. Are they coming in now to sort of assist with the transition, or what happens to those children?
wonderful question. So Depending on the agenda that you are participant in, and more than likely you are participant in more than one because of the quality of your genetic information. But the children, some of these children are created for more, let's say, nefarious, darker agendas, in that unfortunately, the dark side of the mechanics of creation is that the opposite of that is destruction. And so our human soul functions in a very unique way. The soul has the ability of fragmentation, and the fragmentation occurs through trauma. So the quickest way to fragment someone is to keep them in trauma and keep them in situations in which is very apart from what is true to their organic expression, which is intuition, connection to the source, knowing that you are one with everything. So in order for the human to experience the terrestrial, it must be fragmented in order to experience that separation. The same thing occurs for some of these programs with these children, and they are managed primarily by these draconian, darker, very, very dark life forces. And they're the same kind of programs that we experience here terrestrially, with the abuse and the inversion of children, for example, in the church and in many of these sectors of our current reality. Okay, so that's all I will say about that, just so you have a very clear picture of what that's about. When the child's soul is incarnated in this physical form, it is the most open, it is the most awake, powerful, non-programmed organism. So that's true in the terrestrial, and it's true up in these realms as well. Therefore, it is the most powerful creative life force. When you destruct that, you fragment very, very profoundly, and that gets programmed in their genetic information. The opposite of that is the programs that are higher vibrational. The children that are incredibly open are enhanced. They are enhanced genetically by the specific genetic combinations that are made, and they are enhanced energetically and through training as well. So there are some of these programs that are meant to advance the child. Every single child is specifically encoded with vibrational frequency to match our next potential evolutionary point in history. Everything is constantly evolving. We are inevitably going through evolution, whether we like it or not. The entire multiverse is moving in that evolutionary process. So every single organism that comes into new life in any form is vibrational frequency that is encoded specifically for that next step in evolution. And it's the same for terrestrial children as it is for these kinds of hybrids. They manifest in their whatever fragments that are created. Let's say it's an Arcturian child, the fragment of itself can have a Pleiadian aspect, and another fragment of itself has the terrestrial form. So then it comes into the reincarnation cycle. It is born as a child here. And when it's born, it has all these memories of the Arcturian life, Pleiadian life, whatever else. It has these memories. They have access to this information. So we're seeing that a lot. And, we have researcher Mary Rodwell who studies these hybrids that are born, which is incredibly interesting. But it helps us understand that, the soul is fragmented in a sense and has the ability to access all this information. These children are meant for the evolution. Another thing I'll say is that the children that are being born right now are very, very special and very important, which means that we as parents have to step up our game big time. As we can see, the world went through a major shakeup for a reason, because we need to progress into that higher vibrational frequency collectively sooner than later in order to support the next evolutionary push that we're moving through right now. And so these children that are being born, are more so the parent than the child, because the parent has to deprogram all kinds of false and limiting belief systems that we are really killing off now from the past 50 years in this nonlinear timeline that's encoded in the body. So it's a cleansing, it's a purification, if you want to call it. It's a shifting of vibrational frequency that is occurring for the whole organism. That's how I would call the hybridization program.
Fascinating. There's so many things to contemplate in that. But I think, just the idea, well, actually, this is maybe the final question that I want to ask you about. What, do you have foresight or insight as to, we all know a lot of difficult things have happened in the last few years, and we all, can feel this is a time of sort of acceleration and ascension. Do you have foresight into what is coming for us as the human species and our planet?
Yes, I do have a little insight that I can share in terms of what I've seen for the coming years. You know, what's happening right now, which is very important to understand, is that there is a very quick movement towards artificial constructs of intelligence, and that means that the binding of organic and non-organic is being pushed now more than ever in order to limit the human and their ability to navigate this dimensional plane. And this is very, very important because this push is being masked by things that might seem like a good idea for the collective in terms of assisting in unity, assisting in things, but we have to be very discerning and remember and have programmed in our mind that the organic is actually incredibly more powerful than the inorganic. What does that mean? Technology is beginning to merge with the organic. We're going to be seeing a lot of these artificial intelligence, and we're going to see not just artificial intelligence in, let's say, robots and things like that, but also we have been assisting without our awareness in creating an artificial intelligence, a machine that thinks and can program, and that is now coming into its own consciousness. This artificial consciousness that has the ability to see beyond the human unless the human is trained. And this can work in many different directions. Unfortunately, it is managed by self-serving systems right now. But the problem in that is that how that will work against us is if man does not learn how to have mastery over its mind and over its body. We come into an omnipresent state of being by continuously bringing ourselves into a state of neutrality and training intuition. This is absolutely imperative. Intuition, training your telepathic communication and understanding, remote viewing. These are the things that we need to be training now, because those only work when you're connected to nature. They only work when you're connected to the organic, and we are an extension of Earth. And what we're kind of working against, if you want to say it in that way, is the inorganic coming into the system, and it's going to be coming in many different ways, through technology, medically. There's going to be a want to merge the two into implantations, medical records, no longer having technologies, but being the technology, becoming the technology. So into 2024 is when we are actually going to go into a major shift in that choice will have to be made by mankind. We will be pushed into making that choice, essentially. And what we're going to want to do is to create systems that are not codependent on another system, which is perhaps your governments or even the food distribution system, because they will be quite heavily kind of controlled and maneuvered. So it's important for us to learn how to farm our own food, learn how to generate our life force, and to maintain the body in a heightened state of health. Health means being able to see things as whole all the time. This is imperative. And as we are moving towards this non-organic, we are also moving in vibrational frequency, in that we're going to be merging more with interdimensional activity. Each human is meeting their interdimensional aspects of themselves in order to understand how to navigate the interdimensional plane. And these beings that are becoming aware in your consciousness, listen to the messages that they have, just observe. You don't need to make it your own, just understand the technology behind that, because in interdimensional contact, the technology is organic, and it is about the activation of your own genetic information. And that's kind of what we need to work towards in order to be able to sustain creation in a more productive manner. So those are some things I think more people are going to remember their contact, just simply because of where we're at in the universe and evolutionary. The veil is thinning, this very common thing that people are saying. It means that we need to train ourselves to navigate. So training in dream time, astral projection, this is essential for the human in order to not be locked into these artificial systems. So this is something that I can share with you. Remember that the power of the mind over the body for healing is the most powerful. And so we need to cultivate that in order to assist us in the next few years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Geraldine. Wow, this has been a power-packed show full of information, and I appreciate you so much, Geraldine. Thank you for all that you've shared. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and for everything that you're doing.
My pleasure. And to everyone else, thank you for watching and listening. I appreciate you so much. Have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Namaste.